Welcome to Mid-Maryland Votes, Maryland's meeting place for real conversations about the issues that affect our communities. On this episode, we're joined by Greg Alton, a retired Washington County Sheriff's Office professional with 25 years in law enforcement. Greg gives us his perspective on the Minneapolis unrest and recent use of force incidents involving ICE and Border Patrol. What the public sees, what cops experience, and where accountability actually lives. Now let's get into it. Welcome to Mid-Maryland Votes. I am your host, Mark Flynn. With me is my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
And we have a very special guest tonight. We have retired Lieutenant Greg Alton of the Washington County Sheriff's Office. Greg, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me. Good evening, gentlemen.
We wanted to discuss the shooting in Minneapolis with the ICE agents that involved Mrs. Renay Goode. There has been a lot of speculation on both sides. We know you've been a police officer for many, many years, and you've been trained in this situation. And we want to try to get your take on the situation.
Renay Goode was in Minneapolis. She was protesting some of the situations with ICE when ICE was in the area. They asked her to get out of the vehicle, and then some certain things ensued that we'll be talking about here. But my understanding is that you yourself actually had, from the side of being a police officer, and a similar experience of your own. Could you go a bit into that?
Sure. So in January of 2018, I received a call from loss prevention at Target regarding an ongoing problem with a male that was doing some retail fraud. He had been doing it all over the state of Maryland. Asked me if I was in the area and if I could just kind of do surveillance and try and stop the male and identify him so he could be charged. So myself and my partner, we set up surveillance. The male ended up committing the crime. And my partner and I went to stop him, and he fled on foot, fled to his vehicle. As I went to try and apprehend him, he got into the vehicle. By the momentum of me trying to stop him, kind of pulled me into the vehicle. He put the window up on my arm and then started to drive away.
When you say retail fraud, what was it that he was doing?
He was going in and purchasing iPads, making legitimate purchases of iPads. He would then leave the store, come back an hour later and return the iPad. However, it wasn't in the box. He would put something with similar weight. Like on this instance, he put cans of tuna fish in there. He would then seal the box back up, heat seal the wrap, and return it. And he had the receipt, so they would have to give him the cash back. So he ended up getting an iPad plus the cash.
Right.
And like I said, he was doing this all over the state of Maryland.
Your experience is you got your arm trapped in this vehicle. This guy, this nut job, is driving away and he's accelerating at speed. How did you handle it?
So I ended up having to discharge my weapon. I guess fortunately, the round struck the B pillar, so it did not impact the actual inside the car, the interior of the car.
Can you explain to our viewers what the B pillar is, please?
So that would be the beam between the front of the vehicle and the rear of the vehicle. Yes, on the driver's side.
It's all steel. We know that stopped the bullet.
Yes. Kind of spider web the bottom of the window. Now, whether that frightened him enough or whether it was just me being able to pull my arm out at that time, I was able to get free of the vehicle as he sped away. As he was leaving, he actually rammed my partner's cruiser. So another second or two, and I'd have been stuck between his vehicle and when he rammed my partner's vehicle.
And essentially, you were in a life and death situation.
It was a life or death battle at that point, yes.
I mean, all of that, I assume, transpired in how long of a period of time?
Seconds.
And what went through your mind during those seconds?
You just rely on your training and your instinct. Because that's what people were you scared? Well, you don't have time to be scared at that point.
Right.
You just react, you rely on your training, you rely on your instincts, and you do what you've been trained and told.
And that's very interesting, because one of the major criticisms of how the ICE agent dealt with that incident with Renay Goode, and also many of the other instances over the last decade plus that have come under scrutiny, is they look at that situation and they see the video, and they're looking at a video from a very calm perspective, not being in the middle of it. And they're looking at a video that is, they have time to review the video. They have time to go back, look at it again. They have time to put it in slow motion. When you are in the midst of what is a seconds, or I think in the occurrence of this video, even less than a second, the entire exchange occurred in, it's what you're saying. There isn't time. It's just reactionary.
And the people that are doing this are media people that are doing it from the comfort of their studios or homes, legislators who are at their desk behind doors that are guarded by the very people that they're trying to defund, and so-called experts that never put on the badge and gun uniform and know what a police officer has to do. I mean, you literally have a split second to make that decision.
Yeah.
And the car is traveling at speed. And, the arguments are the following, Greg, and I'd like you to address each one in order. One is that you never position yourself in the front of a vehicle, and that the officer in Minneapolis was not in jeopardy because the vehicle wasn't pointed at him. What's your feelings on that?
A couple things on that. So in my instance, I wasn't even positioned in the front of the vehicle. I was at the driver's side window trying to make an arrest of a criminal that had committed a crime. So a lot of times the circumstances dictate of how you have to react. You haven't put yourself in that position. I mean, we're obviously sworn to protect the laws and uphold the laws. And that's what is so frustrating about these situations.
Monday morning quarterbacking is a very common thing nowadays. And with the pushback against police officers in general that happened a few years ago under the defunding the police movement, many rights were taken from police officers.
So in my instance, I mean, immediately I was required to submit a report, a use of force report. I did hire an attorney, which is a right, not because I did anything wrong, but as a police officer, especially in today's world, you have no idea what the thinking is. And we can get into this later because, this case went to trial. The suspect was charged and actually went to 2 trials because in the first trial, he was found not guilty of the most serious charges and hung jury on the lesser charges. But we can get into that later. So I did get an attorney, and, one of the things that the attorney had me, the first paragraph was, I am writing this because I am ordered to write this report. I'm still trying to process everything because, it is a traumatic event. Obviously, there's some things there are details that you can remember to the T, and there'll be some of the weirdest details to this day that I can't remember. Like I cannot remember what happened to my walkie-talkie. And that's going to sound strange when we talk about that later, but I had no idea what I did with my walkie-talkie. I had actually thrown it to the ground at some point during the incident, but that's one of the biggest things to this day I can't remember. When did I throw my walkie-talkie to the ground?
And the situation going on, your adrenaline kicks in, your training kicks in. Obviously, your thoughts are, if you're thinking anything, it's that I want to go home to my family at the end of this shift. Absolutely. I imagine.
Absolutely.
And police officers do have a responsibility, I would say, to make it home safely to their families. Obviously, everything has to be done in according with the law, according to what is ethical and moral. And at the same time, we also have to recognize that the life and well-being of the police officer is of equal importance to the individuals that are being dealt with. I remember talking to one police officer who was in a firefight. Him and a partner were going to, I guess, arrest a violent individual. That individual opened fire on them, and the report essentially what he remembered was what he thought was cans of soup being thrown at him. And after the fact, he realized, wait a second, it was the discharged casings of the bullets from his partner hitting him. But he remembers them being cans of soup.
Right.
So, and it just goes to speak that when you look at the video of this Renay Goode situation where again, it is so easy to Monday morning quarterback, that this police officer had, and there were several different angles for several different cameras. I know there's one particular camera angle that is shown, but there actually were up to 4 that I'm aware of and that I've seen myself. But you realize that this individual it's not a figure of speech. He had less than 1 second to react.
Yes.
And everything that you're talking about in your experience, all of that was happening to him at that exact same moment.
Absolutely.
And that Honda Pilot that she was driving is not a small vehicle. It's a large vehicle. Clearly in the video, she's accelerating away, trying to get away. Her wife is telling her to run. The officers are ordering her out of the vehicle. And from the video of the ICE officer that actually fired the shot, he is hit by the left front quarter panel of that car.
Correct.
This is everything that we've seen. Okay, now the arguments are being made, Greg, that he never should have placed himself in jeopardy in front of the vehicle, that the training of police officers is to avoid that position. What is your position on that?
Again, it's coming from people who have never done the job. Again, it goes back to circumstances dictate. I mean, she actually backed up first, and then turns the wheel and comes towards him. I hate the fact the people that are making these comments have never done the job, have never been there, don't know what's going on out there. Again, things are transpiring, like you said, in seconds.
That as we discuss this, Renay Goode, it is a tragedy that she lost her life. It's an absolute tragedy that this officer had to discharge his weapon and has to live with taking her life for the rest of his life. The whole situation is tragic, but responsibility has to be assigned in order for us to be able to move on from this incident. And people are trying to put the responsibility on different factions. Obviously they believe that Miss Goode should have been allowed to leave. And if you're a police officer, your viewpoint is she should have listened to the commands that was given, get out of the car, and then if there is a charge, she can fight that misdemeanor charge of obstruction or whatever she was doing, because she was clearly obstructing.
Correct.
She blocked the street off. She literally blocked off the car. She forced these federal officers out of their vehicle into a hostile environment and a hostile street where they had no place else to go because she was blocking them in. A lot of people are going to second guess the officers in question, but I don't know any officer in my 42 years of being on the job. I don't know an officer that would have done anything differently than what they did.
And the early facts of the case, from what I've seen and what I'm reading, is they were planning on effecting an arrest of her. That's why they were ordering her out of the vehicle. Mm-hmm. And basically, the officer that was involved in the shooting, from what I have read and what I have seen, he appeared to be the cover officer. You had the other officers approaching the vehicle, ordering her out of the vehicle for whatever transpired beforehand. But you've seen and you've read and you've heard that she was obstructing their investigation. Mm-hmm. So it appeared that they were moving in to effect an arrest on her.
And that cover means safety and security. He's responsible for the safety and security of the person affecting the arrest.
Correct.
And so what you're saying is that the police officer who did the shooting, who started out, for those who may not have seen the various different videos, he started out by walking around the vehicle. And are you saying that he was being the cover officer, and as a result of that, he basically was assessing any potential additional risks that may be there while the arresting officers were telling her to get out of the vehicle?
Correct.
And so essentially him walking around the vehicle was part of the role that he was playing at that moment, the assigned standard role. And what you see is that there was an ICE vehicle several seconds earlier, maybe 30 seconds earlier, that was leaving to go down the street. I mean, for whatever reason, they were just pulling away to go down the street. Renay Goode had her vehicle at a 90-degree angle in the street where she was blocking half of both lanes. As the one ICE vehicle was literally just pulling around and going by her in the front, she kind of like jerked her vehicle forward. But as soon as that happened and the vehicle drove by, ICE officers in the vehicle behind that initial vehicle got out, and those were the ones who became the arresting and cover officer.
She was obstructing their investigation. That may have very well been what initiated the fact that they were going to effect the arrest on her.
as an officer approaches the scene, one of the biggest things that people think about is the line of sight to me and the suspect clear? If I had to draw my weapon, are there innocent parties in that line of fire? And so this officer would be trying to position himself in such a way that he wasn't jeopardizing innocent people on scene as well as other officers. Is that correct?
Correct. And you're constantly evaluating and reevaluating the situation as it's developing.
And it is an active, developing situation.
Yes.
At first, Renay Goode was not, was not resisting in the vehicle until she was told to do so by her wife. I mean, you can clearly hear on the audio where she tells her to leave. I can't remember the exact terminology. It was something like, go baby, go.
Drive.
Huh?
Drive, baby, drive.
Drive, baby, drive. And she does. She slams that bad boy and drive and goes. And she literally physically knocks into at least one of the officers. The video is very clear on that.
And if you actually listen to the video at the very beginning of the video, you can hear her yelling to Renay, stay in the damn vehicle. So you have the agents, the federal agents or law enforcement ordering her out of the vehicle. Meantime, the wife's yelling at her, stay in the damn vehicle.
Right. And she obeyed the wife, not the law enforcement.
And on top of that, other individuals that are also yelling different things. It seemed like it was a fairly aggressive crowd. I mean, they were yelling insults. Renay's wife was insulting the officers as well. But in this entire scenario, there are so many moving parts. But also all of the additional stimuli is filtered out when you're watching the videos. I mean, all of these things were happening at once. So the officer, the cover officer goes around the vehicle to assess any potential additional risk. And he completes the turn around the vehicle. And then, he's going around the front. The wife continues to walk with her cell phone, continuing to film the officer, continues to walk around the vehicle.
Right. Well, so the wife approaches the passenger side and tries to get into the passenger side of the vehicle. When I guess the door was locked and she couldn't get in, and then she yells, "Drive, baby, drive," as the ICE agent is standing at the front of the vehicle. He gets in the interaction with the wife where she tells him about getting lunch or something like that. But she says,
"You better pack a lunch because it's going to get physical." Is what she's implying that she can handle her business and that she physically will get into it with the officer if he pushes her or whatever.
And that is Renay Goode who said that.
No, this is the wife.
That was the wife.
The wife was the one who was on foot around the vehicle with the video camera, deliberately filming her wife, Renay Goode, in the car. They were hoping to get some kind of incident on video, clearly, because they had been doing this for a long period of time. They traveled all the way over to this location on some kind of Facebook premise or some kind of group on Facebook, specifically to harass ICE during an operation that had been leaked.
Right. This wasn't her first time.
No. They're professional agitators. I mean, in the sense that they were, let's say they were professional demonstrators, because that's what they called themselves. They were demonstrating against ICE. And by the way, we all served in the military. I mean, we absolutely, you're a law enforcement official. We 100% support people's right to demonstrate anything they would like to demonstrate against. But where the line is crossed is when you obstruct, you interfere, you assault, and then you disobey the orders of law enforcement officials.
Yes, absolutely.
And she did all of those. Everything. I mean, there's at least 7 times where Renay Goode could have saved her own life. She could have not blockaded that car. She could have not, she could have moved out of the way and allowed the officers by. She could have not tried to hit the first vehicle, or at least, feign like she was going to do it. She could have listened to the orders of the officers and got out of the car. And then if she was arrested for obstructing, fight that misdemeanor charge in court. Mm-hmm. There was multiple times that Renay Goode had the opportunity to leave the scene alive, along with the officers involved.
Correct.
And the responsibility is clear in my mind.
Absolutely.
But what you're bringing up is the fact that has become an industry, and it is an industry at this point, of paid protesters. I mean, it's advertised $15 to $18 an hour, advertised on Craigslist to be a paid protester. But is it legal to pay someone to force a police officer to arrest them? I mean, that seems like it's criminal in nature for some reason, and yet it's being openly advertised as a career, a job.
Right. I think it's going to be tested here in the future. I think the First Amendment to a degree is going to be tested. How far you can go with the First Amendment.
Right.
I mean, you get to, you know, that it's, okay, freedom of speech, but they use the old adage, you can't scream fire in a crowded movie theater.
Yeah.
I mean, you have people now go on the TV, like I saw the other day, I think it was the leader of Black Lives Matter came out and said, we need to burn the city down. Now, I don't know what the laws are in Minnesota, but in Maryland, if you make the threat of arson, that's a crime. You don't have to actually commit the arson to be charged with a crime, the threat of arson.
And that is when you can see, and I believe this is from this part is from the body cam footage of the police officer. You can see that she's pulling forward and she's not looking directly at the officer, which I find very interesting. She turns her eyes to where the wheels are going, right, to where she ultimately wants to turn the wheels, but the wheels aren't turned there yet. Right. She starts going before the wheels have been turned from the left to the right. And what that is in midway means she's going straight. So she starts driving straight at the officer. I would estimate that he was 4 feet maybe from the vehicle. So she guns this vehicle, this car, with before the wheels are completely turned in the direction she, I think, obviously wants them to be. And therefore the vehicle starts driving directly at the officer.
And you can also, on the video, you can hear him get hit. You can hear a loud bang. He says he cries out in pain. And then on the follow-up video from bystanders, you can see him run after the vehicle after he's discharged his weapons, and he's limping. Right. He's physically limping. Obviously, he has no idea he's being videotaped by other people. So it's not like he put on a fake limp. He literally was injured by that car as it went by. There's no doubt about it.
And the reports are out now that he suffered internal injuries.
Yeah. Yeah. And when the vehicle hits him, you can see with the body cam footage that the whole top part of his body crumbles onto the vehicle and bounces off. He was essentially at the driver's side corner of the vehicle already. She pulled forward simultaneously. He did two things from what I could tell. He leaped further, from the corner out of the way and pulled and discharged his weapon all simultaneously. And then as he was essentially, I guess, in more or less midair, the vehicle hits him. His upper body crumbles on the vehicle. He bounces off. And of course, the rest is that her vehicle just glides into and crashes into another vehicle.
Correct.
Several other vehicles actually down the street. And then the officers in question that were challenging the vehicle and challenging her presence pursued her. And then when they arrived on scene, they couldn't effect an arrest because she had already been, obviously was dead. People are absolutely politicizing this situation, right? I mean, we see it over and over again. The people on the far left are making the ICE agents out to be the enemy, that they shouldn't have been there in the first place. Also, Greg, the federal officers involved, many people are denigrating them as not real police officers. What is your feeling on that? And did they have the authority to arrest Renay Goode?
Absolutely, they had the authority to arrest her. She was, again, hindered and obstructed an investigation. You bring up the real police officer part, and that's kind of funny because I have friends and even family members on Facebook that, have said the same thing about ICE. They're wannabe soldiers or wannabe law enforcement. Well, a lot of the ICE agents are from former military, and they were special ops in the military. Mm-hmm. So for them to say they're wannabe soldiers, that is a huge disrespect.
No doubt. I know many people that work for U.S. Customs and ICE, and I served in the military police with all of them. And we served in the wars. We served in Desert Storm together. These are very well-trained military policemen, and now they're civilian federal officers.
Look at the
by the way, the training for the federal program, that's also no joke. I mean, the training that these gentlemen and ladies have to go through in order to be on the ICE team is almost a year of training.
Look at the raid they did in Chicago on that apartment building a few months ago to take down that dangerous Venezuelan gang in Chicago. Yeah. They're repelling from Black Hawk helicopters. You know, I mean, that, so for people to say that they're wannabe soldiers or they're not law enforcement, and here they're rappelling from Black Hawk helicopters onto the roof of the buildings to effect this search warrant, that's why I give very little credence to these people that do these analysis and the criticism.
You know, I feel the same way, Greg. It's funny to me that these people will sit behind their keyboard on Facebook and criticize men and women who are out there putting it on the line every single day. And these folks have never put it on the line, not even a single day of their lives. Yet they feel comfortable criticizing men and women who do every single day to keep our country safe.
And the worst part of it is they're there to keep our community safe. The same people that are criticizing, they live in these communities, and they're doing this job to keep them safe. And this is the thanks that they get.
I feel like we've been down this road a couple times before in recent history. And what I'm particularly thinking of is the Black Lives Matter riots of 2016, and then the Black Lives Matter plus Antifa riots of 2020. Correct. And what happened is that they were, you know, there would be protests after a police shooting. And of course, the breakdown of the police shootings that I've looked at is very similar to this, where it was a tough situation, but the police officer made the decision that followed both their training and protocol. But there's also the effects, and the effects of these situations have been quite clear, which is that in these communities where they had a violent reaction to where there was a lot of criticism about a police shooting of some sort, the crime in those neighborhoods and where it has gone up dramatically. We're talking 70+% increases in the numbers of murders, more than 70% increases in the numbers of rape. But just the amount of crime is horrific. And we've been dealing with this for 10 years now. And the tragedy in these communities is horrific. And that is my concern, is that if we turn this same dynamic or that same dynamic into what is happening with ICE, that we could have additional communities having the same numbers of deaths and suffering.
Unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I just got caught up on the most recent news in Minnesota today, and I see they stormed a church. The protesters stormed a church today during church service, led by Don Lemon, you know, former CNN news anchor. He led a bunch.
You mean he flew down from Cape Cod from his $1 million home?
Right.
With his husband and 3 children that they adopted. He flew down from Cape Cod to Minneapolis. To be part of a protest. And, you know, because he's so oppressed, Greg, you know, with his multi-million-dollar home on Cape Cod.
Right.
Unbelievable.
And that's the problem. You have like the media types and, you know, looking at Minneapolis. Right away, the mayor comes out and condemns ICE. He called the fact that law enforcement was going to say that it was justified. Well, he saw the video and that was bullshit. Well, now he's got to eat his words because he doesn't know about the other videos. And that's the problem with these politicians. They do these knee-jerk reactions. And it's the same thing like Ethan, you were talking about. You go back to what kicked off the 2020 riots, and that was the police-involved shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And immediately after that police-involved shooting, the governor of Wisconsin comes out and called the police officers involved in that incident assassins, without any kind of investigation, without any kind of gathering all the facts of the case, the knee-jerk reaction. And then he's joined by the Hollywood types and the professional athletes. You know, LeBron James comes out and starts spouting off, and all these football players are taking a knee and, you know, going against law enforcement. And the NFL allowed them to celebrate or honor that kind. But when all the police officers were murdered in Dallas by that sniper, and the Cowboys wanted to honor them by putting something on their helmets, the NFL said, no way, you know. So that's where it gets discouraging.
You know, we interviewed an individual from Washington, D.C. A few months ago, and he is both a business owner who has business locations in 3 of the 4 sections of D.C. He is an award-winning public school teacher for mathematics. So he has a very unique perspective from two very different vantage points about what's going on in DC. And we asked him about the takeover that the Trump administration did of the DC police. And he had a very interesting point. Even though he was very much against the takeover, and he had a number of reasons why, one of the things he pointed out, the protests against the presence of the National Guard was coming from the wealthier communities. And he said that in the higher crime and poorer communities, he said that they actually were quite appreciative of the fact that the crime, these murders and these rapes and such, and the presence of drug dealers, that we were talking about earlier, that the crime just melted in their neighborhoods. And yet it was these other wealthier neighborhoods that were not ever really impacted by the increase in crime that occurred after the various BLM and Antifa riots. They were the ones that were protesting. And I think that there's another aspect to this as well, which is that there are victims, and those victims don't get a voice. The protesters get a voice. The individuals in these poor neighborhoods where the crime is being concentrated in, they don't get the voice, and their perspective is not said about what exactly happened and what they think about it.
Yeah, I don't think that the people in the high crime areas have ever been pro defund the police. They want the police there. They want as many police officers as they can get as possible. But to Ethan's point, it's the wealthy members of the community, most of them progressives and most of them liberals, who basically orchestrated the defund the police movement.
Absolutely.
Which affects people in high crime areas. I have many friends, in some of these areas, and none of them have ever been about defunding the police. Do they want the police to act ethically? Of course. Do they want the police to be held accountable? Well, certainly. And they should be. They should act ethically, and they should be held accountable. However, none of them want them defunded, and they certainly don't want their numbers drawn down when you're living in an area that is a high crime area.
Correct.
And those areas exist in Hagerstown, in Frederick, and all over our counties and cities in Maryland. The morale of law enforcement is getting better, I believe, under the Trump administration, but it's still got a long way to go because we got beat up for 4 years at plus.
Absolutely. And I think it has got better in a lot of areas of the country, but can you imagine being a police officer in Minneapolis? Because your chief is like for the criminals. How do you work for a leader like that? How do you work for a police chief in Portland that goes on national television and cries because two violent gang members were shot?
It's virtue signaling is what's happening from these politicians and mayors and governors. They think they're getting votes in the future. And let's face it, the Democratic left, they're reeling from the last elections and everything else going on. They are striving to find voters. And I guess they think that if they cater to them or pander to these criminals that they're going to get, or illegal aliens who have criminal records, that they're going to somehow get votes. But you're right. The bottom line is that they are throwing gasoline on the fire.
A DA in Philadelphia who's saying, if law enforcement or ICE or the National Guard, you come to Philadelphia and commit a crime, we're going to arrest you. Why does he think that law enforcement is going to come commit a crime? And
you have legislators here in Maryland who are stroking the fires. Just recently, some bozo legislator is trying to pass a legislation where anybody who has worked for ICE cannot be a Maryland state trooper or a law enforcement official in Maryland, trying to deny their basic rights to be a police officer in Maryland. And this is going up before the assembly.
Yes. And I saw another one that's submitting a bill to remove the masks from all law enforcement. No law enforcement can wear masks.
The percentage of increase in violence against ICE officers, I believe, is over 700%. And specifically getting hit by vehicles since last year is up 3,500%, in part because that training from those paid protesters, there's training that they go through. And part of the training involves actually taking off getting hit by a pursuing ICE vehicle, dragged out of the vehicle. That's where those highly dramatic videos that have been over social media come from. Is it's that kind of created situation that led to the tragic shooting of this mother. This mother and this wife, Renay Goode, and the fact that there's this orchestration behind it is just chilling, in my opinion. And
it's more than just chilling, Ethan. It's evil.
Yeah,
you have an evil presence that is stirring these people up. I guarantee you, Renay Goode is not some evil woman. She thought she was on a cause. She thought she was a crusader. They made her believe that she should go out there and literally obstruct federal officers, to help out the oppressed illegal immigrants, not the criminals that are being arrested. She'd been lied to, and she believed it, and she needed a cause, and they gave her one.
Indoctrinated.
Yeah, she's been indoctrinated, and I feel bad for them too.
Yeah.
I feel bad for these men and women on the far left who have been indoctrinated into believing that they should call their fellow citizens and police officers Nazis and any other derogatory terms that allows them to do violence upon them. It's an evil movement. There's no doubt about it.
What is your take on that? The ability of a police department to both police, do everything that's required, the endless things that are required of a police officer, plus being a positive member of the community in the sense of morale and camaraderie. What is your take on a police department's ability to perform that role as well?
That would be, in a perfect world, that's a fantastic role. But I mean, think about where we are today as far as in law enforcement. Departments are struggling to find people that want to be police officers now. I mean, I think back to when I first started, and to this day, I still love it. But I think about some of the young people coming up now being police officers, 25. I don't know what's going to be the next 5 years in law enforcement, let alone looking down the road to, what 25 years is going to be. I'm hoping it's going to get better. I'm hoping we're going to kind of keep the trajectory as far as what's in office now or who's in office now. Because I think under that way, it's going to get better. But my fear is if we go back to the left taking over, we're in trouble.
There's no doubt the far left are not friends of law enforcement, and in fact they vilify law enforcement on every chance they get.
They're not fond of America.
Yeah, that's true. And here's the problem. They are driving the qualified, good, ethical officers away from law enforcement. Yes. And so now all we can attract are people who are, their motivation to become police officers is suspect.
Right, exactly.
They're driving away the good people, and now we're hiring people. I know the standards have slipped. College degrees were required for some departments. Now they're not. Drug use was, a disqualifier. Now, not necessarily so. We're dropping our standards to attract people to the job because the job has become so problematic because of these far left politicians and activists.
Yeah, and the legislation that they're passing, everything.
I mean, the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights that was rescinded here in Maryland has done more damage to the police officers in Maryland than any other legislation in the last 50 years.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of officers went with it. Retirement, people are retiring in droves because they don't want to put up with the knuckleheads and the BS anymore.
Well, you run the risk of, not only, obviously losing your life, but losing your family, losing your house, losing your freedom.
Mm-hmm. Recently, we interviewed Chuck Jenkins, the sheriff from Washington County. He has been financially ruined defending himself in court against charges brought by a liberal district attorney down in Baltimore that ultimately were dismissed and found not credible. But in the process of having to defend himself, he literally had to liquidate all of his assets. The man has no retirement left anymore. Just defending himself against spurious, accusations that turned out to be complete horse feathers. And police officers don't want to tolerate that. You can't blame police officers, good police officers, for taking the retirement and going and finding another job.
Right.
And it's sad because you're right. As you said, I think under this present administration, it's getting better. And whether you're pro-Trump or, you hate the orange man or whatever it is, you got to admit that law enforcement is getting a better ride now. Crime is going down across the country. You can't argue a result. You may not like the man, but his policies are working. That's a fact.
They don't care about that. They have such a hatred for the person that it does, everything else goes out the window.
Right. You're right. And look, I tell people all the time, I'm a moderate. I don't agree with everything that President Trump does, but I cannot argue that some of the policies are highly effective.
Exactly.
And that's the bottom line. The analogy I use is this: you can get a country doctor who's incompetent, or you get a real asshole, top-notch surgeon to do your next surgery. Who are you going to pick?
I'm taking the asshole top-notch surgeon.
Absolutely. I don't care if he calls me, every name in the book. I want that asshole surgeon cutting my body open.
Exactly.
And Trump is that asshole surgeon.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, that's just how it is.
Do I wish at times he'd be more presidential? Absolutely.
No doubt about it. I'm the same way. I wish he would stop tweeting, stop going on social media, and just be the president. You can't argue with results. The man's results are amazing.
Exactly.
In so many different ways. Well, Greg, we appreciate you being on Mid-Maryland Votes. As always, you bring a great opportunity for us to discuss a variety of issues. We wish you the best of luck in your retired career, and we thank you very much for coming on Mid-Maryland Votes.
Thanks, gentlemen. Have a great night.
Hey, this has been Mark Flynn with Mid-Maryland Votes, my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
If you liked what you saw tonight, share it with friends or family. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Mid-Maryland Votes. That wraps up this episode of Mid-Maryland Votes with Greg Alton. These are complicated moments, complicated issues, and they deserve thoughtful conversation, not sound bites. Whether you agree or disagree, hearing directly from someone who spent decades on the job as a police officer matters. Like, follow, and share for more content like this, and you can find Mid-Maryland Votes on Facebook and YouTube. If you loved the episode, share it with a friend. If you hated it, share it with an enemy. We're equal opportunity entertainment.